This episode, especially this episode, sponsored by our good friends at Docking Bay 94 located in Boca Raton, Florida, as well as our friends at Famous Faces and Funnies located in Melbourne, Florida. Remember, shipping nationwide. Whenever I head down to visit my in-laws down at Coral Gables, Florida, I stop in and see my good friend John at Docking Bay 94. So come in and join me and see what John recommends for this pickup. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Codename New to Vero 2. Hi, I'm your presenter, Shabu Are You. It's always a pleasure when you have the opportunity to meet friends, and Docking Bay 94, John at that shop over there, has been a friend for the longest time. And regulars of my channel know that he's not only a sponsor, but he's also someone that I greatly admire, and such a great classy guy. And anytime you get the opportunity to hang out with him for a little bit, talking comics, talking pop culture, it's always a treat. So I've kind of been MIA the last 2 weeks. I've been, since Thanksgiving, I attended my brother-in-law's wedding, plus Thanksgiving over at Dallas, and then back to Florida, going up and down the state. I've been busy with work and school at the same time. So opportunities to sit down and actually make a video have been few and far between. But I thought this would be a great opportunity to discuss some of the pickups I had since, going to Dallas and up and down the state of Florida. Now, these titles are very attractive to fellow Gen Xers. Even if you're not a regular, I kind of pick up books that you could go into a comic shop and be like, hey, I heard about that one. I want to check that out. So that's what I kind of do on this channel, just for fun, to help others along. With this episode, we're going to touch on a lot of things, not just comics, but I'm going to talk about a few action figures during this, these 2 weeks or this past month. And also, I want to give my thoughts on the HasLab Skystriker. As a G.I. Joe YouTuber, I think my point of view, I just wanted to share what I thought. And yes, I did back the project. All right, so we're going to jump in with the issues that I picked up, and I think they're noteworthy for you guys to check out if you haven't already. And in the comments below, write what you think. Maybe you have some books that you would like to share with me and the other people out there watching. So I like to keep that open, back and forth going on, because we're all here to learn and grow and have fun. That's the most important thing. So the first issue that I wanted people to make note of is Gunslinger Number One. This is another entry in the recent Todd Mcfarlane Spawn universe. And during the last comic book pickup-ish episode, I talked about King Spawn. Well, McFarlane's following it up with Gunslinger. He was introduced early along in the regular Spawn title, but kind of was like put aside for a little bit. Well, Todd McFarlane's bringing this character out, guns blazing and all. And the interesting thing is, this is a totally separate character. This is not another version of Spawn or anything like that. And this particular character has been around for 200 years. So we're going to see a lot of current and back episodes going on. The first issue has 3 stories in it. I haven't gone through them all yet, but the artwork is freaking on fire. So I would definitely recommend, especially for us Gen Xers that remember Spawn Number One in the 90s and, those end of the, the Venom, Spiderman 300, 299, that whole story arc. Todd McFarlane's artwork on this is freaking insanely good. So it is worth picking up just to marvel at the talent this guy has. And still to this day, I still can't believe how much of he's just, from where he started, we all remember working in Marvel, to where he is now, like this big like Todd McFarlane is a corporation in himself. So it's just kind of cool that he's bringing a new character into this iconic franchise. The second book I highly recommend for not only fellow Gen Xers, but everybody in general, is the new Hulk series. Now, this is from Modern Comic Bigwig Donny Cates. And the thing is, like, a lot of us Gen Xers may not know who Donny Cates is, but he is the Todd McFarlane of this current generation. And I, for one, have become a fan of his. He just completed a legendary run on Venom, which was very interesting, amazing. And also he's currently on doing Thor. I really enjoy the Thor book, and that's where I kind of got more into Donny Cates. I know, I think I got a signed issue number 1 from his crossover book that he is also doing as well. But man, I'm interested to see how he handles Hulk. Now, Immortal Hulk has finished. That was another run. So this is going to kind of piggyback and expand on that notion. I kind of think that, like, from what I've gathered so far, it's primarily dealing with what makes Hulk's rage. Like, what is the fire that ignites that rage within him? So that's what this whole series is going to try to explore. And with this one, this is a variant copy, and there's various different, with this being an issue number 1, there's a whole bunch of covers to go along with it. But this is definitely another book. I think that Gunslinger and this one are definitely must pickups just because of the impact and it has on modern comics today. And it's kind of fun to see what this guy Donny Cates is going to do with this another iconic character. So I'm actually very excited about this, and I hope you are too. All right, moving right along. The next book, again, I always mix up some back issues along with some new ones, is going to be X-Men number 166. Something about this cover just harkens a memory in my past, so that's why I picked it up. Nothing really big, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing special about this issue, except for the fact that it's one of the early times the X-Men engaged against the Brood. And it's just a classic Claremont story with arcs going all over the place that are going to go down the X-Men timeline. So it's kind of cool in retrospective to revisit, in the 80s. That's Maya the parrot. But it's just kind of cool to revisit that, and knowing where some of these end up with is kind of like really interesting. So again, I just love the cover. You got Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Wolverine, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Storm, and Psylocke. It's just one of those issues that are just harkens back. And I think, if I'm correct, Frank Miller's Wolverine was done by this time. So it's kind of cool to see, with Wolverine, how he progresses in this as well. So it's just one of those covers that's what caught my eyes. The cover for this issue is just one of those that is beautiful. And this is a beautiful copy. Nice. This is just nice corners, everything beautiful. All right, going back to a modern book, and we're going to look at Red Sonja number 2. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, or I think I also featured this in an early comic pickup, but I picked up Red Sonja number 1. And the reason why is the Mikira, what's her name? Andolfo. She's an Italian writer, but I featured her way back in 2019 when she did a story called Mercy. She is a very good writer, so to pair her with Red Sonja and that mythos is going to be intriguing. What's also interesting, and this is a homage to Stray Dogs, and if you guys follow or have been under a rock, Stray Dogs has been probably 2020's one of the top 2 best story arcs of the year. Really good story. I was shocked how good Stray Dogs was. And I showcased the variant horror covers that they had. I think they had The Crow from The Exorcist. So, having a horror title with our pets is really amazing. You are fully invested in that story arc. So even though the cover is just an homage to that, I'm kind of interested to see where America does with this. I keep forgetting how to say her name. I don't want to mispronounce it in case she sees it, but I know for a fact that she's a really good author, and I'm interested to see what she does with Red Sonja. All right, we're going to dive back into the past and look at another back issue, Hulk 346. Now, what's interesting about this issue is it's like a passing of the ship. You had Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson working on the cover and arts for this, or pencilers for this issue. So that's why I picked this up. How often do you see the person, I mean, the predecessor and the successor of the Amazing Spider-Mans working on one title? And I think that's what is engaging. And the other thing is, like, Hulk isn't really, he's not the primary character in this issue. Betty Banner is, and there's a lot of little interesting things of note for this issue. For example, they refer to Mary Jane Watson as Peter Parker's wife, and I think later on around 584 in the Amazing Spider-Man, Mephisto kind of like wiped that out. So in a roundabout way, it's kind of deals with what's going to see in the next Spider-Man movie, where he erases the past or messes up the future with the multiverse. So that's kind of why, that's another reason why this is an interesting book, you know. But mainly I picked it up because of the Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson artwork in one issue. So that's freaking pretty cool. The next book is I would say it's a recent back issue. It's Amazing Spider-Man number 74 in the current timeline, but 875 in the overall Spider-Man timeline. And what makes this one is it's a Peach Momoko variant. Again, for a lot of Gen Xers, Peach Momoko is one of these modern comic artists that is really high in demand. I think her artwork's okay. I mentioned it before. I'm not a super duper fan, but an anniversary issue with her as the artist for a cover variant is something that I couldn't pass up. This is definitely one that I'm going to buy and put away. And on the same notion, I picked up Amazing Spider-Man 78. Now, what's going on in Spider-Man, I think a lot of Gen Xers may remember that the Ben Reilly character, the Spider-Man clone, has come back. And he's actually actively he's working as Spider-Man because Peter Parker is in a coma or unconscious or something. But, you know, again, I have to catch up on this issue. But that's pretty much the premises of what's going on currently in Amazing Spider-Man. I actually liked Ben Reilly. I thought that Scarlet Spider character was kind of interesting. And that was probably towards the tail end before I really, like, dropped off of collecting comics. You know, I guess too much varsity sports or what have you, but it was at that tail end of it. I know that, and I do have I featured his first appearance issue in Web of Spider-Man, so I have that. So it's kind of interesting to connect that issue with this now, so that's what makes this interesting. All right, so last thing in the back issues is I picked up Alvira's Haunted House Christmas Special issue. Again, this is like a lot. I mean, I talked about it when I featured her first appearance in the DC Comics, but these were kind of like very difficult to find. I mean, they're newsstand variants, but I just thought that they were pretty cool, featuring Alvira. You know, and speaking of her, I was able to get sent her autobiography, Yours Cruely. And the best part about this one is that Alvira signed it and sent it over to me. So that I'm really honored, you know, the fact that I produced some videos covering her Haunted Hills movie, her comics, and her people made note of it, and just a show of appreciation. I mean, that means a lot. I mean, it's something very small, minute, but it means a lot to me. So I'm really glad to get another Elvira autograph. And, you know, this book has been getting New York Times bestseller. It talks about, you know, from her start, her whole life, all the craziness that happens in Hollyweird. So, so far I've read about one chapter of it, and it's really damn good. I can't wait till where I could finish this book off and like fully digest all of its content. So if you haven't, pick this book up. It's pretty cool. All right, so now let's dive into the second aspect of this particular video, and that is I'm going to talk about the Skystriker project. Now, for all of you that the few people who may not know, HasLab is a Kickstarter that is set up by Hasbro. So let me break that down. A billion-dollar corporation is using a medium used for, the small guys in order to facilitate the mass production of a said good or item. And I think that in itself is absurd. And from the get-go of this concept, HasLab, the first one was the Jabba sail barge. And if you follow this channel, I'm sure you're friends with our good friends at Retro Blasting, Analog Toys, all these people that have voiced their opposition to a HasLab concept. I too am one of those voices. But before I go any further, I did back this Skystriker project. So back into my spiel. For a billion-dollar company to utilize this is absolutely absurd. But at the same time, you kind of like understand, but you can't forget. I mean, it still doesn't justify for them to do that. They're just saying, oh, distribution, no more Toys R Us. Toys aren't as in demand anymore as they used to be. Yes, true, all true. But they're still making a good money on Nerf, My Little Ponies, Transformers. They're still doing pretty good. So for them to utilize this platform to do this is absurd. And I wasn't initially going to back the Skystriker project. I just thought it was dumb. But I got to give credit where credit's due. Now, the Rancor had just failed 24 hours earlier, and along with I think a Cookie Monster figure, some other stuff has not gone through the pipeline, but some have made it, like that Jabba sales barge. I think Unicron came through, the X-Men Sentinels. So there have been some projects that have met the benchmark and gone into production. But the initial news about this, I was like, no, forget it. But I got to give credit where credit's due. GIJOE learned from what because they all operate as different entities in the sense that you have the Transformers team, the Star Wars team, the GIJOE team. They all try to come to down the pipeline with his submissions for them to utilize, and how there is the possibility of potential earnings. Remember, everyone that puts a deposit on these projects goes into a bank account, and that bank account is earning interest. So, for example, this one is going to be out in 2023. So you're getting interest for whatever remainder is in December, all of 2022, and probably a good chunk of 23 as well. So they're collecting interest upon that, plus their profit margins of, there's no way this thing is, $240 to make and produce and everything like that in mass production. So their profit margin is absurdly high. But again, you got to credit you got to credit the GIJOE team, because other teams have just been like, here's it, whether you like it or not, and you do want it. But no, the GIJOE team gave us these situation reports. They kept the engagement with the fan base to keep it alive. And then I guess once that Rancor thing failed, many of the reasons why it failed and the Skystriker succeeded are pretty obvious when you look at it from a marketing standpoint. The GIJOE team was much more engaging and aggressive in bringing this to fruition. And a lot of people that been jaded by the Rancor switched over to the Skystriker. But it's just an evil at the time. The bottom line is, if you want one, then get one. If you don't get it. I mean, there's pros and cons to each one. I hear sides, but no one's preaching shit to nobody. Everyone's a grown-ass person. So whether you want it, get it. And deal with all that stuff. If you don't want it, then stick by your guns and don't get it. But for me, I said that I wasn't in favor of it, but I ended up getting it. Why? Because I knew that, number one, it was backed by Northrop Grumman, who got their official seal. I thought that was big because, you know, we've all got all these incarnations of the Skystriker without Northrop Grumman's seal of approval. They're the ones that create the actual Tomcat. And also, I think that Cobra hack thing was very good marketing right there. Adding those 3 extra figures, plus Scarlet, and then Ripcord at the end. So the damage isn't as significant in hindsight, but I waited until it was officially backed. Once it met that 11K, then I was like, all right, you got me. I mean, you got me. I want one. So whatever. So that's my take on this whole HasLab. It's good, it's bad, it's everything. Fuck it. They're going to get your money anyway. All right, so the last segment, we're going to talk about some of the action figures I picked up. And I'm just going to pull it out right now. I'm still doing the barbecue episode in the mythology like I do with a select few classified figures. I just don't do the toy. I also talk about the history in the comics and even current up to modern day incarnation of G.I. Joe. Just to put a little bit more meat on the bone for people, and especially those that, you know, are maybe just jumping on to G.I. Joe for the first time. So they get to learn about the mythos of my favorite character, Barbecue. So with that aside, let's look at the figures I was able to pick up. Number one is the Mandalorian Shore Trooper. And this is in that carbonized Cardback that's reminiscent of the old Kenner line. I want to know what people think about these, because you would think this is something that is, you know, special, but really it isn't. I mean, and the price point of this as being $19 is absolutely absurd for, like, I mean, of course the Cardback is nice, but it's not that much different. And this whole line, it's like how I was praising G.I. Joe for being more engaged with the fan base than the Star Wars, whether it be Lucasfilm or the Hasbro Star Wars team themselves. It just seems like they're a little bit more out of touch, and there's been a lot more misses, like with Rose sitting on the shelves and all different versions of Rey. It hasn't come to fruition where they thought that, oh, everybody's going to push for these new characters and they're going to forget about, you know, the old time fans. These kind of offerings, I don't know if they're, fuck, why did I pick this up anyway? But here's the reason why. It's because, unlike me, I saw a shiny package and I'm like, woo, you know. So I did that with the other ones. I'll show you. Like, I got the Mandalorian, the Imperial Death Trooper, the Remnant Stormtrooper, and these are supposed to be a Walmart exclusive, but, you know, it's like, it's cool when you pick it up, but then when you sit down and think about it, like, why the fuck did I piss that much money for that? You know, it doesn't make sense. I want to know, like, what other people think of these new Star Wars 4-inch or 3/4-inch lines. I mean, are those people still collecting them? Are they sought after? And are they just switched over to the Black series? I don't know. What would you do, and what do you guys think about this particular style? Does it still have a place? Is it still worth pursuing? Or should Hasbro just get rid of all these bells and whistles and just make it a simple, like, you got to give credit for the G.I. Joe retro line in that sense. They kept it plain Jane. A lot of people have been complaining about it, like, because the cardbacks are kind of thin and flimsy. But, you know, it is what it is, and I'm glad they kind of kept it simple in that sense. Now, the big surprise, the big hit that I'm going to tell fans, I don't care, GenXers, modern, are these. These are, again, the Kenner style, but they're in that G.I. Joe scale of iconic characters. And I featured this when I was talking about something with the comics, but this is one of the more sought after ones. It's the Symbiote black Spiderman costume. But again, this is a wonderfully done package. Simple, plain. I mean, you got the basic articulations, probably what? Shoulder, elbow, I don't even think knee. It's like they're taking the Secret Wars scale and kind of scaling it down a little bit. I think these are a home run for every collector. So screw Marvel Legends. This is the shiz. I enjoyed these a lot, and I wish I got into more of these because I just think they're freaking awesome. So look out for this style Marvel superheroes. They'll have a Kenner, and I just think they're just beautifully done, nice card back, simple, and it just belongs with comics. So whether you're a comic fan or an action figure fan, this is a win-win. All right, and the last two figures, I'm kind of rushing this and just giving just a little bit of a sample, tidbits, you know. I'm going to talk about these, the last two, the GI Snake Eye Origins figures. I think these are freaking awesome. And I have a feeling that this, what's her name, Akiko figure, watch this, in 20 or 30 years from now, this is going to be the most valuable figure from this line because, you know, the character just made her only appearance in the movie. The movie didn't do too well. It has all the recipes to be a collector's item 20, 30 years down the road. So mark this down. If this thing is like well over $200, $300 in 20 years, you know, I said it here first, folks. But again, these are excellent done. I love the Scarlet. This is probably a better Scarlet. Well, it is for a fact better than the classified Scarlet I showed earlier. A lot of people have. This is a wonderful version of Scarlet. Beautifully done. The artwork on both of these is phenomenal. It's just a win-win. It just sucks that, you know, so many people hated this line. And it doesn't, again, ACC finally did his recap, and a lot of people, it's not good, it's not bad. It is what it is. It's an introduction to a story. So you can't grade War and Peace after reading, going up to chapter 3. And that's how that whole movie was set up. Yeah, there are things that suck. There's some things that are good. But it does deserve a chance to complete the story before you make a final assessment. And that's what an intellectual and educated person would do. I mean, the Star Wars movies, this is better than them. It's better than the Ghostbuster, all-girl Ghostbusters. So it's not that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad as well. What it is an introduction to a bigger story. And the only way to, you know, we have to support, that's the other reason why you kind of back the Skystriker, is because G.I. Joe's pulse is very, very slow. With that movie not doing well, I mean, I feel like you kind of have to. Like, you know, yes, force Hasbro into giving more for your dollar. Don't just take whatever crap, you know, they crap in a box and put out there. No, make our demands. Be like, hey, we want this, we want that, we want you to do this, we want O-rings back, we want this stuff. But at the same time, we got to support, you know, a little bit in order for them to listen to us. Because if it doesn't make them any money, we could scream bloody murder. They will not give a shit. They're like, why should we care? We don't make anything off of that. So take your complaints and go away. So you see, it's like a catch-22 with this whole supporting for the Skystriker project or whatnot. There's more to it than just, you know, because monetarily wise, it sucks. We're going to lose no matter what. We all know that going in. But at the same time, like, in order to get what we eventually want, we can't agree to everything, but we should also make our demands heard and addressed before we engage. And once we do, we must engage into it. So again, that's my whole assessment. Well, thank you for sticking with me. I know it's been a while since I made a video, and I apologize. Just between work and school ending for this term, it's been quite busy. But I do appreciate all the comments. I do appreciate the feedback. I do appreciate your support. So we're going to do another PGX unboxing and another EGX unboxing. I still have to do that barbecue action figure video, which is almost done, and also a recap of the latest G.I. Joe comics. So this is Shabu RU, signing off.